we have I-69 doing it now, so we have a whole host of problems. But anyway, I do appreciate the opportunity to address you. I've been in this business for over 27 years. And what I can tell you is that you're in a position now, most counties in the state of Indiana are facing. When we look at information coming from jail inspection reports, probably close to 70% of the counties are reporting they have staffing problems. And a lot of that is a result of nothing that you had anything to do with. When jails were built, we had a jail booming bid back in the 1980s, and a lot of jails were built, and there was no consideration for staffing. And we just felt we could put inmates in there and we didn't have to deal with it. Unfortunately, the federal courts, they don't seem to think that's too good of an approach. And so what's happened is, as sheriffs have been looking at increasing risk of liability and counties have been looking at increasing risk of liability, unfortunately, a lot of times that ties directly with what's going on with staffing. And then what further complicates the issue is that when we're looking at over 90 counties in the state of Indiana, you all run criminal justice departments differently. Some counties have an approach that we're going to be tough on crime. Some have more of a neutral approach to the way they deal with crime. Some rely on community corrections, probation more. Some rely on the jail more. Some counties have inmates sit in jail longer than other counties. And so there's not one approach that fits everybody. But when we look at the data, what I can tell you in Dearborn County is that when we look at all counties, you're number 5 in the state on the number of inmates you lock up per 1,000 county residents. So if that's the approach, understand that that comes at a cost. If you're going to lock people up and put people in jail and keep them there, you're going to have jail space. You're going to have staff to supervise those inmates because you can't leave them to do their own will. You're going to have more money for supplies. Your costs go up. Right now, the state average, when we look at the rate of incarceration per 1,000 residents across the state, it's about 3 inmates per 1,000 county residents. You're over 5. As a matter of fact, like as I said, you're number 5 in the state. And once again, you know, that's where the county is at. So it's not just the council's problem, it's not just the commissioner's problem, it's not the sheriff's problem, it's the county's problem. And the county has to address that. So, you know, unfortunately, I've made this little spiel before several councils over the last couple of years, and I want you to know that you're not alone. Several counties are grappling and dealing with this particular issue. But you do need to understand that my concern is for the sheriff, to make sure that you're aware that this is an issue of liability that you're facing. If you put inmates in there that are not supervised and you have something that happens, I want to make sure that the sheriff embraces this liability with the county so he doesn't absorb it all on his own. And so that's one of the reasons why we do the staffing analysis, just to give you the information so you can think about how you build a plan so you can begin to move forward. Obviously, you wish you had a magic wand and you could wave it and the money would appear, but we know that doesn't happen. And it takes some time to build that and move that forward. So, but as I said, I'll be happy to answer questions. I'll leave some business cards. You can certainly call me anytime that you want to have a question about it. And be happy to have a discussion if you think this needs to go further sometime down the road. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson?
Well, I would like to make a comment. I've kind of kept quiet since I'm directly involved in this whole thing anyway. But in referencing this being one of the 5th or top 5 counties for keeping people locked up. And Dearborn County has for a long time had a reputation of being tough on crime. That our judges across the board go by the law. And there was a slogan years ago that an inmate come up with as we were taken into prison that come to Dearborn County, come on vacation and leave on probation. And there's probably a lot of truth to that. It's not a good tourism slogan, but people think they're used to getting away with everything, across the river, up the river to Cincinnati, and being in this tri-state area, we get it all. But when they come here, they are held accountable. And they're given every opportunity. The judges, I think, really try not to lock people up. But there comes a point in time where you give everybody a chance, and another chance, and another chance, and they still can't get it right. You have to hold them accountable. And therefore, we're dealing with what we're dealing with. Initially, when all this started, the discussion, which has been ongoing for a long time, this is a problem we've seen coming for years. And you get to a point where you have to deal with it. The liability is a big item. But practically, you know, with more space, when you've got 160, 180, or 260, 280, 300 people confined in a very small area, the potential for problems just explodes. I mean, it gets a little testy when you got about 20 or 30 people crammed in a 15 by 15 area or whatever the case may be. And you're going to have problems. You're going to have lawsuits. We see it on a regular basis. So this is something that we have to deal with, and it's a safety issue, not only for people that are working there. I mean, they're in jeopardy at any given moment all the time, as well as the inmates themselves. And if you don't have the adequate space to properly house people, depending on what they're in there for, you automatically have a potential powder keg that could go off at any time. So this is something that we're dealing with on an ongoing basis. More room helps. You spread them out a little bit, give them a little more room, move people away from the worst offenders and the people that are trying to, you know, go through these programs and, you know, get back on the right track. Don't expose them to the other side that got them where they're at to begin with. Choice of friends is a big problem. These kids do it all the time. They're peer pressure and they're hanging with the wrong people. And they may get busted. But I tell them, I said, you get back out, you go back out there hanging out with the same people, we'll be seeing you again. And it happens way too often. So it's just an ongoing, frustrating thing. Unfortunately, we have to deal with. The courts try to deal with that as best they can and still hold people accountable. And there's just some things that we had no control over. When this was going on, the staff neutral, gathered probably a pie in the sky, you know, green. At the time, we probably could have managed the numbers that we were dealing with then for a while.